Well, we'd like to think that love will keep us together, but that doesn't always happen. I hate to tell you. But there are some things that we need to know about, and that's what we're going to tackle on Popoff tonight. Gaslighting. What does it mean? Has it happened to you? It happens when a marriage spins out of control. Now, Joryn Jenkins is a trial attorney with some 40 years of courtroom experience. She is a family law lawyer, strategist, and best-selling author, including War or Peace, and I Never Saw My Father Again. Joryn, nice to have you with us on the show.
Hey there. Glad to be here.
You betcha. Okay, define gaslighting so we understand when we start using that term.
Gaslighting is when someone manipulates someone else, usually someone very close to them, usually a spouse, to make that person question his or her own reality.
Okay. So what tools are used to do that?
Oh, my God. Well, I'll tell you what. Did you ever see the movie? It's an old movie, 1944, Gaslight?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, he was trying to make his wife think she's crazy.
Yeah. He is, now, in Gaslight, it's fascinating because there's a whole there's an understory, if you will. It's not just that the marriage has spun out of control, it's that he actually married her to get into her dead aunt's house to find some missing jewels. Mm-hmm. So that's the story there. But what he does to get her to think that she's crazy so that he can have her, what we call in Florida, Baker acted, so, put away, basically.
Yeah.
He tries to make her crazy, and the way he does that is by turning the gas down and up again. So way back then, they didn't use electric lights. They used gas lights. And so if you turn the gas down, or if you turn the lights up in another room, then the lights would go down in all of the rooms in the house because you're using up more of the gas in more of the rooms.
Yeah.
And there were many other things that he did in that story. So, he really illustrated most of the excruciating ways that you can force someone to question their reality.
He was very creative.
Oh, my gosh. He denied that things had happened the way she remembered them.
Yeah.
He denied that he had said things that she remembered him saying. He denied that she had said things that she remembered herself saying. He trivialized her. Mm-hmm. So you're imagining things. You're blowing things out of proportion. He countered with, so if he not only questioned her memory, but he would say, I didn't say that. You're the one that said that.
Yeah. And
it just, ultimately she actually thought she was going crazy. And, there are ways that you can counter it, but it's difficult because, everybody forgets stuff. I forget stuff all the time. My husband says, no, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
And I know that about myself, so I'm not, it's not a dynamic that we have. He's not trying to undermine me. He's trying to help me deal with things, remember things. Where did I put my glasses?
Yeah.
And, you find them in the fridge.
Yeah.
That actually happens in real life.
Uh-huh.
That happens in real life, and that's why it's so undermining, because you don't know if it's really happening or not, and eventually it can very subtly work.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you start doubting yourself all over the place.
Yeah.
Now you said 48.4% of women and 48.8% of men have experienced at least one psychological aggressive behavior by an intimate partner. That's half the population.
Yeah.
On each side, male and female.
Yeah, but it hasn't necessarily happened in the marriage that you're in. It may have happened in a partnership that you were in. Keep in mind, I'm not just talking marriage. It most often happens in a marital situation, but it can happen at work.
Really?
Believe it or not.
That's amazing. Now, I'm glad you said it doesn't happen always in marriage. Believe it or not, my husband and I have celebrated our 52-year wedding anniversary today. And I don't.
Well,
I mean, thank God I didn't have anybody who was doing any of that. But you wonder. I mean, now I know that it's not only in marriage. It could be work. It could be friendship. Probably that's a relationship too.
Yeah. It can happen in any relationship where there's a power imbalance. So it happens probably more often than not where there's also domestic violence, because we know that those situations have a power imbalance. It's not necessarily a man targeting a woman. It can be a woman targeting a man.
Oh, yeah.
It can be a power imbalance because, remember, it's all mental manipulation. It's not physical. You know, when she's discrediting you to other people, he really hasn't been himself lately, or, you know, he tends to forget things. If that's happening a lot, then, and if you are questioning your memory, then you really need to start thinking, I wonder what's going on here.
Yeah.
And it may be that you need to get out of the relationship.
Yeah. And is it a good idea to kind of keep a log of that kind of stuff? Or
Well, that's exactly what I do recommend that. I always, my answer to everything is start a journal.
Yeah. Okay.
And it sounds silly because I don't keep a journal. It's not something that I do, although I have done in my past. But if you keep a record of events or maybe of conversations that the gaslighter might describe differently later, then you're basically collecting evidence. And you know, collect evidence if there's actually physical evidence of things. I can't imagine what that might be. In the movie, he was actually hiding things from her. And so, you know, when she started finding them, she began to realize that, among other things, began to realize that he was gaslighting her. But if you keep a record, if you take notes of dialogue, you know, if you notice that he's telling you too often that you lost something, then start writing down the things that you've lost and start, you know, looking for them, trying to find them. And include quotes when you can, because that'll help you trust your memory, which is really critical to undercutting that kind of behavior.
Amazing. Well, even, I mean, with the technology that we have today, too, I mean, you've got automatically a recorder in your phone. You could just push the record if you're having a conversation that can stay someplace in case you need it.
Well, that's true, although, and I'm not a criminal lawyer, you have to keep in mind that quite often recording a conversation without the other person knowing is considered illegal. Now, I say that, but it's illegal. I don't know what the law is, but I would argue that if you're doing it for your own mental health and you're not going to use it in court or anything like that, then you'll be able to get away with it just for your own purposes. Yeah. So it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and I mean, if it comes to that and you need to go to law enforcement, maybe they can't use it in court, but you get law enforcement to start doing an investigation.
Yeah.
So what are some of the warning signs of a gaslighter?
Well,
before I do that, is this, a power play?
Yeah, it is. The gaslighter has, he's got a goal. In Gaslight, the goal was, he wanted freedom in the house to go find the jewels.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's just to be the kingpin, to be the man in charge, the woman in charge, to be the power in the house. To have the other person do what you tell them to do without questioning you.
Yeah.
It may be something as simple as keeping you to himself. There are people out there who really don't want to share their spouse, and they're resentful of friends. They're resentful of family. Huh. I mean, that right there is another indication that you're being gaslighted if he's separating you from your support network. so that you become even more dependent on him and therefore more vulnerable to him. He may do this by telling you he doesn't like your family or your friends, but he also may do it by pitting you against them or them against you, or by discrediting you to them. She really never liked you in the first place. Things like that.
Yeah.
So that's all symptomatic. And, it's interesting because gaslighting didn't become a common expression, although it grew out of this movie. It's exactly where it came from, the Gaslight movie.
Huh.
And it didn't become a common expression until more recently.
Yeah.
And now, if you Google it, you'll find all kinds of articles on it. It's very helpful if you're worried. You can look at these articles, and they'll list, the symptomology, the projecting and the diverting and trying to distract you, when he wants to avoid talking about something that you're accusing him of, for example. If you're accusing him of some gaslighting behavior, he may very well say, well, why don't we go to dinner at that restaurant you really like? Don't you really want to go back there? Just change the subject totally. And you're like, wait, what just happened? I thought we were talking about something.
Yeah.
And so, it's really hard to identify it, and people get away with it, but there's a lot written about it. So, in fact, a friend of mine wrote a book on gaslighting, Stephanie Sarkis.
Uh-huh.
She's got her PhD, and I can't remember the name of the book, but it probably was Gaslighting.
Yeah.
Well,
out of curiosity, is this, for the person who is the gaslighter, is this a mental condition?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but is it a mental health condition? I don't think so. I think it's a manipulative technique. It might be indicative of a sociopathic personality.
Oh, okay.
Or a psychopathic personality. Neither term of which I'm positive I can define for you.
Yeah.
But if anything, it's just a symptom. It's a behavior that is a symptom of something else.
Gotcha.
But it's definitely it's not. You don't want to be around someone like that.
Now, if you're in a relationship, whether it's the male or female that's gaslighting, and you've got kids, does that add an additional problem?
That's such a great question. We don't often think of kids in relation to gaslighting because it's such a powerful dynamic between a victim and a power person in their lives. But let's talk about that. One of the things that the gaslighter does is try to separate you from your support network. That includes your kids, so that you become even more dependent on him. And so he's probably going to turn your kids against you, or at least he'll try, or she. Obviously, it's not just men. She may try to turn your kids against you by telling them lies. By the way, don't misunderstand me. He's telling lies. There's no question that's part of the dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
He distorts the truth one way or another, and if he has to lie to do it, that's not a problem.
So
obviously, if someone's hiding things from you and then telling you that you lost them, what's that about?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. You wonder, I don't know, you wonder how a person develops that kind of personality to do that. But then you also wonder why someone rapes somebody. It's a power thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not sex, it's power.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's very true.
So if you want to divorce a gaslighter, I mean, how do you prove that in court that he's doing that?
Oh, you don't have to prove it. The question is getting to the point where you're strong enough psychologically to make that decision. Because obviously what's happening is you're questioning your own mental health. You're questioning your reality. If it's not really happening, he's going to take care of you. I mean, that's part of the dynamic. He's making you more and more and more dependent on him because he wants to be the power. And, And so it's going to be hard to get away from him. So, one of the things you do is you keep a record, because the more that you can be sure that you're right and that you can trust your memory, the more able you'll be to make the decision to leave. So you want to separate yourself from any situation physically that you can. And that, unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can move out. I mean, obviously, if you're questioning your mental health, you're not going to move out unless you have a family member that you can call on, or friend that you can say, I need to come stay with you. But if he's alienated those people from you, you can't go there.
Yeah.
So one thing, that you might do is reach out to family and friends and find out what he's been saying about you, and, tell them that you're questioning your own reality, and try and get their help to find out what's really going on. You can challenge the gaslighter. If he can't confuse you or undermine you or demean you, then, in other words, if his behavior isn't really bothering you, then he's being unsuccessful. So he may give up, that strategy. He may seek other ways to get power over you, but he may give up that strategy. And, of course, you can always try and get professional support. But, again, if he's got power in the house, and that means power over the checkbook, how are you going to see a professional without him finding out? Well, you may get some free help, or you might reach out to family and see if they're willing to help, provide that kind of professional support that you need.
So a person who is being gaslighted, tell me about this kind of person or personality that they allowed that to happen to them. Or maybe it's not allowing, maybe the gaslighter is just really good at what they do.
Well, I think that the latter is, obviously very possible. But I think often, as I said, you've got a power dynamic there already. So in the movie Gaslight, he was an older man, she was a younger woman. And so she looked up to him. She was very much in love. She was not necessarily a weak person. She was just very young and in love. And so that made her, the perfect victim in that story. But there are other perfect victims, sure. I mean, any situation where one person already has some power over the other is a good victim to start with. And I suppose that there are certain physical conditions, for example, someone stuck in a wheelchair, that would make you a possible victim.
Oh, yeah.
Someone who is suffering from depression already, that would make that person a potential victim, for sure.
Jeez. These gaslighters are predators, aren't they?
Yeah.
Bottom line.
Even if it's being a predator just in their own household, yeah.
Jeez, amazing. Divorce, are the numbers up? I mean, at one time it was like basically a 50-50 chance of keeping in a marriage.
The numbers that have always been quoted are 50% of first marriages, 67% of second marriages, and 73% of third marriages. I think those are the numbers. It's been a while since I've had to quote that. And in divorce. And the numbers go up seemingly because you become actually less able to stay in the marriage for some reason. But I do think that's changing, but I also think that one reason it's changing is because younger folks are waiting longer to get married. So they're either not marrying the first person they meet, or the first person they fall in love with, and they're becoming a little more mature before they marry, so less likely to divorce. In other words, let's not forget, the newest information is the new brain science is telling us that the brain isn't fully developed until we're at least 25 years old, and sometimes for men, a little older.
Yeah.
So, if you're getting married when you're 18, you're still a kid.
Yeah.
And we kind of even look at it that way nowadays, although way in the way back, 15 years old was not too young to get married. When a woman started menstruating, she was marriageable. So we're waiting longer, we're maturing better, we're now on the other end of that scale, we're also living longer. And I think what I'm seeing is more and more older divorcing couples, because I think they've had a good life together, but over the years they may have grown apart. They were focused on the kids. They didn't spend enough time together. They did too many things differently from each other. They didn't do enough things together. And so they're coming to the conclusion that, if they're going to live another 30 years, which is quite possible, then we'll get divorced when we're 60. Why not? We had a good life, and I want to have another good life. So I think that the numbers are going down overall, but divorce is still quite prevalent.
I don't think we not attack it or maybe present the idea of living together, of marriage, of relationships, of divorce. These things should be talked about at least in the high school, and not just the biology of it. I mean, there's so much more. There's the emotion of it. There's the commitment. If you think a piece of paper makes the commitment, it's not. It doesn't do it. It has to be much more than that.
Yeah, it's true.
Because I remember I used to say when I was a lot younger that, it didn't matter to me if we got married with a piece of paper, because the commitment is more important, because you could get out of the marriage, But if you make the, when I was growing up, you'd shake hands. That was your bond. That was your commitment. And
times change, don't they?
Yeah. And I mean, to the point that, boy, you better have, a prenup. You better have a lawyer take a look at everything, and you better have a 20-page contract before you commit to anything. And that's kind of sad, to be honest with you, isn't it?
Well, there are aspects of the past that I like a lot better in my mind, but there are also aspects that are working better these days, I would say. So, half a dozen of one, six of the other. It's hard to weigh the pros and cons. I do think that prenuptial agreements, if you're going to get married and if getting divorced is going to be so very difficult, then I think a prenuptial agreement makes a lot of good sense, because it's kind of forcing young folks to, or whoever is getting married for that matter, to consider all the questions before they get married and not find out after they're married that one of them wants to raise the kids Jewish and the other wants to raise the kids Catholic. And by the way, don't misunderstand me. Most lawyers don't talk about all those things.
No.
They do talk about some of the major ones, though, the finances, for example.
Yeah.
But I do recommend to the folks that I see who come in for prenup that we talk about all of those other issues, those side issues that are really going to be critical. I mean, how are two people getting married? They both have careers. Are you going to combine your accounts? Are you going to have one joint account? Or are you going to have a joint account and two separate accounts? How are you going to save your money? Are you going to save it all together? Or and those, they don't talk about that. They don't even think about that,
really?
Most of them, until after they're together and they've got bills to pay, and they're thinking, well, wait, are you going to pay this bill, or am I going to pay this bill? Or what? How are we handling this?
Yeah. No, it makes good sense, because, yes, when you say prenup, automatically people think, well, yeah, they must have money.
Right.
Somehow money is involved. But like you said, there's so much more. Do you want kids? How are you going to raise them in a religion? Career types of things. Should both have a career? Does one want the one person to stay home and take care of the kid? There's so many issues to marriage.
Yeah, there are.
And even if you know someone for a long time, I mean, my husband and I went together 4 years, and there were still surprises when we got married. It's just the way it is.
Yep. That's right.
Amazing. Well, I think it's fabulous, to be able to talk about some of these things and to openly talk about them. I think some people are afraid, well, if we start talking about it, it might hurt the relationship. No, if you don't talk about it, you won't have a long relationship, so don't worry about
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Now, do you have a website?
Oh, yeah. You can find me at jorynjenkins.com. Or you can also find me at Open Palm. The name of my business is Open Palm Law, so openpalmlaw.com.
Fabulous. And your books, War or Peace, I Never Saw My Father Again, where are those available?
They're on Open Palm Press.
Okay.
Or if you go to jorynjenkins.com, you'll find them there, too.
And that's Joryn Jenkins, Jenkins, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Terrific.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Joryn, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, because these issues are not going to go away by any stretch of the imagination.
No, truer words were never spoken.
Absolutely. So just stay well. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and for explaining, because I really wasn't quite sure what gaslighting was, but I do now.
It's a real thing.
You betcha. You take good care.
Watch the movie.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyway, I was trying to think who the stars were, but it doesn't matter.
Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer.
That's it. Okay, terrific. Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and keep up the good work, because we need all the information we can get.
You too.
Take care now. Once again, that's Joryn Jenkins. Go to jorynjenkins.com, and she'll explain it all to you.